And now for your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 392 of This Old Marketing for Friday, September 8th, 2023. And with me, as always, as he always is, my friend, my colleague, my pal, and maybe a guy only second to me in terms of excitement for this week's NFL opening weekend. Yes, Mr. Joe Pulizzi.
I'm very excited. Maybe not as excited as you.
I am super excited. I am like, and I got so excited because I watched the last episode of Hard Knocks.
You posted something on LinkedIn about this. It sounds like you got a little misty.
I did actually. I did get a little misty.
Yeah, why don't you fill us in on what happened?
So at the very end, so it's they're doing Hard Knocks smart this year. They're not stringing it out, right? So it was only 4 episodes. And so
they don't have any writers. That's why.
Well, some would argue some would argue they don't need the writers, but there you go. And it was for the 3 episodes, it was kind of all Aaron Rodgers all the time. And for those of you who don't know, Hard Knocks is a sort of behind the scenes documentary that they do every year, and they go behind the scenes of one of the NFL teams and watch them through training camp. And it's training camp all the way through the very first game. And meaning up until the first game, the very last thing that happens in sort of the end episode is all the players who were in training camp, who you've come to know their stories and come to like them, et cetera. A lot of them get cut because they have to get down to 53 people for their final team. Mm-hmm. And so you've been following these 2 rookie wide receivers. So Aaron Rodgers being whatever. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Who gives a shit? But these 2 rookie receivers who are both undrafted, by the way. They were both undrafted rookie receivers. So there's no way they're making the team because first of all, the Jets went heavy on receivers anyway.
They're loaded at the receiver.
They're loaded.
Wilson is amazing. Yeah, they got a great.
And so these 2 undrafted rookie receivers become friends, and they're sort of the B story, if you will, in the couple of the episodes, and how they became friends and how they push each other, and how because they're both undrafted, they were and at the end they both spoiler alert here, folks, for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but they both make the team, and the 2 of them. The fact that they're undrafted, the fact that they seem like such good guys, it was so fun and so motivational and such a great story. It totally got me ready for the weekend. Yeah, and I'm super psyched that it's kickoff weekend.
And kudos to the front office for the Jets because to find 2 really good receivers that you didn't draft to bring in.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
It is incredible.
Because you're right, only maybe 1 or 2, a handful throughout the NFL of undrafted make it.
Sure. I mean, you may get 1 undrafted guy, and on a team, right? Yeah. But to have 2 of them and at the same position is crazy.
So I would assume both of these guys are great on special teams as well, because that's probably where they're going to be playing.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And then if somebody gets injured, they can fill in wide receiver or whatever.
So, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, I did watch a couple episodes this year.
Yeah,
which I usually don't, but I caught up with it, and yeah, they really did make Aaron Rodgers into
oh my gosh, he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It really is amazing.
Yes.
But anyways, so
yes.
But yeah, it feels like I haven't seen you in forever.
No, I know. I was going to say, how was Nantucket? Did you spend $1 million? Did you go antiquing? Did you go antiquing?
Just shy of $1 million. By the way, they have a thrift store there. They're a very popular thrift store called The Hospital.
Yeah.
And it was as packed as anywhere I've ever been. Like I had to leave because there were so many people there.
Yeah.
That's besides the point.
Basically where it's a thrift store where you spend $500 for a pair of napkin rings. Yeah.
Yeah, I have nothing to say about that. We had a great time, and we did it. We did the trip exactly the way that my wife wanted to. We took the flight into Boston, the Logan Airport. We took the bus from Logan down to Hyannis. From
Yeah.
Hyannis, we took the high-speed ferry into Nantucket because she wanted to do it all this way. And I think it's because she read one of Ellen Hilderbrand's books, and Ellen Hilderbrand is like one of her favorite authors. And
Oh, okay. All right.
she writes a lot about, like, most of her books seem to be set in the Nantucket area. Like if you go into the Nantucket Hotel, she has a book called The Nantucket Hotel, and you go in there and there's her book, and you go into the two bookstores that are in Nantucket, and they have their own Ellen Hilderbrand section in the
Okay. All
store
right.
and merch. Like
Yeah.
she's like a major celebrity figure in Nantucket.
Yeah.
Anyways, we did all the things that in the books you're supposed to do, and I actually did an overview on Facebook, and then I set up my Joe Pulizzi newsletter this morning, and basically did the same thing but added to it. But here's my surprise: outside of the fact that you and I already talked about it, incredibly expensive, probably the most expensive place I've ever been, but beautiful, totally worth it. And you could find a beach with nobody on it, and that surprised me. Like there are like Cisco Beach and Jetty's Beach you can go to, lots of people. There's there's places to get wonderful food and drink around there. There's lots of fun, lots of families. That's great. But if you want a beach and you want to be the only ones on that beach, you will find it. And
That's
it
true.
is not that hard to find. And that's what I think I appreciated, because if you're a beach person, you want to be around people. You don't, you'll find it there. And the beaches are just absolutely lovely.
Oh, they're spectacular. Yeah, the beaches there are spectacular.
Because it's sand. I didn't, you learn as you go. Oh, our beaches are so amazing. They're all sand because it was formed by a glacier, and that's why it's all sand and all the other stuff that you learn. And then you learn that, oh, well, used to, back in the 1700s, started as in the whaling industry, but when that was done, really struggled for a while, and then they focused on tourism. This is what you'll love. So the city planners were trying to figure out, how are we going to survive as a island, or as whatever, as islanders of Nantucket. And they said, we want to position us as an escape from city life.
That's right.
So this started in, I think, the late 1800s into the 1900s. And so they started advertising in major publications in Boston, specifically business publications, to say, take a break, you're worth it, come join us on Nantucket. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
So, and it was print advertising that got them there. So
and it's where it's why you have so much what would be considered old money on Nantucket, right? I mean, that's where all the old money went, and so that's why you have kind of the vibe that you have today, which is, it's very, you have to wear your khaki shorts and your white crisp, button down shirt with your sleeves rolled up and your, untucked just a little bit. And the women are all in flowy dresses and flowers and lots of floral prints and big hats. And, it's all very Martha Stewart and lovely.
Some of that, actually, I was surprised there wasn't more of that. And my wife and I talked about this.
Oh, well, maybe it's changed a bit. Maybe
they're absolutely still there. Like you walk downtown the city center, if that's what they call it, and you will absolutely find that, and you'll see it right away. But if you go to certain places, there's just as many people just on regular vacation wear, and they don't, there's half of the people that that have no F's to give, and you have the other ones that are very traditional that way. And the mixture, and nobody seems to care. Everybody's just like,
no, it's there is that.
You be you. It's all good. But yeah, there seemed to be a lot of money flowing around. I did, of course, I did have to look at the real estate values.
Yeah.
And it would be very hard to get any place, even a shack, for less than $1 million.
Yeah, well, not even. I mean, you'd be lucky to find something for under $2 million. Yeah, it's crazy expensive there.
But the Bluff Walk was Pam's favorite, where you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Have you done that? Have you walked through the backyards of? I didn't really know. Like, we were walking through the backyards, and the Bluff Walk is, where you're overseeing the.
It's like out of a movie. I mean, you're in a movie. It's like you're in a movie. It's
you're walking through the backyards of multi-million dollar, and when I say multi-million dollar, I mean like 20,
Yeah.
$30 million
Yeah.
houses. And there are people in the backyard like having lunch.
Yeah.
And guy talking on the phone, and you're just walking right through their backyard, and just like it's about a mile of going through.
Yeah.
The
Well, when
houses,
we
and
say
you're
backyard,
following.
let's be clear. It's they're not backyards. They're like they're back acreage. You know what I
Well,
mean? It's like,
it is, but and then they allow this area of
yeah, this
passable
public access. Yeah, it's public access. Very
So,
much like here in
thank you, sir.
California as well.
Thank you, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. Thank you for your
Yeah.
thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your taxes. You go through,
Yeah.
and then and all that. But no, we had a great time, and
Nice. Very
But I
nice.
don't know if I don't know if we do it again. I really don't know.
Well,
I mean,
there you go.
it seems like
It's not when you first told me, I was going to say that's not really Joe's thing, right? That's not really or Pam. Honestly, it's not. I didn't really see Nantucket as either of your sort of. That's not your vibe.
Well, it's honestly, I was thinking about this just from our, this is a content marketing show, if you will, and I was thinking about the power of what an author and of a continuous writing schedule, because the only reason why we ended up in Nantucket was because of these Ellen Hildebrand books.
Okay, well,
If she didn't write the books, it would have never happened, because
Right.
I don't know, Pam's read 10 or 12 of her books that were set in Nantucket. So when she got to Nantucket, she knew a lot of these places already because of what she's read. And I know it's not all 100% accurate, but it's accurate enough where the bookstore and the beach and whatever. So I was just thinking about, if you were a city planner, one major thing that you would do is you would hire one or a set of authors to say, hey,
to set your book here. Yeah.
Would you set our book here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you do that? And would you do it can't just be one? I would do it consistently, sign them to a multi-book deal or whatever. They're already going to write a whatever they're going to write, thriller, mystery, love story. Just do it in our town. And I think
that's fascinating. Yeah. That's a new business model right there. There you go.
Well, I was even, I'm working on, I haven't started really yet, but I'm working on my next novel. And I set the last one in Cleveland and Sandusky, Ohio, where I grew up.
You gonna call up the city officials in Sandusky?
Well, I probably should have portrayed it. I love Sandusky, Ohio, but the way that I portrayed it, because of what happened, not so good. Anyways, if you read the story, you'll know what I'm talking about. The will to die.
Yeah.
But I could do a more positive slant next time, which I was hoping to, because I really didn't.
How would you like your murder set here? Let's
open arms with that. Maybe just a love story. Maybe I'll just do a love story on Lake Erie. That would do it.
A love story. That's the name of the book.
Maybe I'm not a good example for this.
Yeah, that should be the name of your new book. Yeah, a love story on Lake Erie.
But it's almost like Andrew Davis wrote his book called Town Inc.
Right.
Which is the same type of thing. This idea that you put a lot of content behind your location. And I think one of those efforts could be, instead of influencers, you get 5, 10 authors and get them to start writing about your location.
That's really cool. That's a cool idea. Yeah,
LA wouldn't need that. But
LA doesn't need that. It's got plenty of that. Trust me.
Des Moines, right?
Des Moines,
or Birmingham, Alabama, or or Sandusky, Ohio, if you will, or Sheboygan. I mean, Lord knows Sheboygan needs more love. So,
Sheboygan.
Anyways,
we're going to Sheboygan.
Going to Sheboygan. Yeah, I mean, there's a torrid love affair that happens in Sheboygan.
Torrid love affair in Sheboygan. I like it. That's the name of the second book. You got Love on Lake Erie and the torrid nature of Sheboygan.
No, but I think I'm going to do that. I think maybe I'll just do Vermilion, Ohio. It's sort of in the middle of Sandusky and Cleveland. I'll go to the fine folks of Vermilion and say, I'm gonna set my book here. And then I'd have it in all the bookstores, and then like 5 people would read it.
Nice.
It'd be great.
There you go.
All right.
Excellent. I like it.
So anyways, I don't know what happened in the last couple of weeks. If we had news, if we didn't have
news. We have had quite a bit of news, actually, and enough for us to certainly talk about on a show. So, and really, it seems to be over the last couple of weeks, as we come into September here, all about AI. shock of all shocks. But we will talk about a couple of other things. I mean, we have the biggest story I think that we want to talk about, and we'll open with it certainly, is how Disney, the New York Times, and CNN are among media companies that are now blocking access to ChatGPT, not blocking their employees, but rather blocking the actual learning model from learning from their content. So we'll talk a little bit about the implications of that. And then meanwhile, by the way, OpenAI has introduced ChatGPT Enterprise, the enterprise version. I definitely have a take on what that means in the enterprise software marketplace. And then, as part of that, we'll also sort of sneak in a story that came out about Gannett newspapers and how maybe people are starting to be able to tell where AI is actually writing a story, and they got a little bit of egg on their face, as it were, when it started to write sports summaries that were a little more poetic, perhaps, than they should have been. Then, if we get time, we will talk a little bit about Truth Social and how Truth has survived a recent vote and will escape the guillotine for at least 12 more months unless it completely goes out of business, and talk a little about that. And then Mr. Beast, well, he has backed a creator league, and now it faces setbacks. And if we get time, we'll talk a little bit about where Mr. Beast might be and what's going on there in the world of NFTs and content and marketing and Mr. Beast with creators and stuff. And then we have a wonderful question from one of our lovely audience members, from Annie Schiffman, and we'll talk about what Annie has to talk about. And then we'll get to Rants and Raves, where I will talk a little bit about what's going on with Charter Spectrum, the company that everybody hates to hate. Or maybe it's loves to hate. Or
is that a cable? Is that a cable company?
It still is. Yes, it still is. It still is a thing. Well, that's the question. That's part of my commentary, is whether it's still going to be a thing or not. But it has turned off access to Disney-oriented channels, meaning ABC, ESPN, and others. And then you will talk about and rave a little bit about the LinkedIn certification program, and talk a little bit about
and you have a take on this as well. So
I have a take on that as well.
I'm interested to hear your take.
Yeah. So, so a chock-a-block of news in the last couple of weeks since we last saw each other. But let's dive let's in. Do it. So we'll open with a story from, it's from CNN, although many of the mainstream media outlets are covering this. And this is Disney, the New York Times, and CNN are among a dozen major media companies blocking access to ChatGPT. They wage a cold war on AI, it says. A cold war in a world.
A cold war. It seems a little bit too much.
It is CNN. I mean, let's be honest. It is CNN.
Maybe that was written by ChatGPT.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so the article opens up and says, while a shot has yet to be fired, in a world where some of the nation's largest newsrooms are actively taking defensive measures to safeguard their content from ChatGPT, the groundbreaking superhero artificial intelligence chatbot that is seen as a potential aggressor to an already struggling news industry. Not too much drama there, CNN. Anyway, a multitude of leading newsrooms have recently injected code into their website that blocks OpenAI's web crawler GPTbot from scanning their platforms for content. The Guardian's Ariel Bogle reported last week that CNN, the New York Times, and Reuters had blocked GPTbot, but a reliable sources review has found several additional news and media giants have also taken this step quite quietly, including Disney, Bloomberg, Washington Post, Atlantic, Axios, Insider, ABC News, The Gothamist, among others. Publishers such as Condé Nast, Hearst, and Vox Media, which all house several prominent publications, have also taken the defensive measure. It seems very interesting to me. The article goes on to talk about how the archives and intellectual property rights of these news organizations are immensely valuable, and basically that's what their belief is, and that there's some justification to all of this. And then the article goes on, basically says we're trying this out to see what's going to happen here. This is a big deal, I think, and not one that's being sort of explored really expansively just at the moment. What is your take on this?
It's interesting. I was talking to James Gardner, about our friend of the show, James Gardner, about this a little bit. We were chatting through LinkedIn, and I said it almost reminds me of how major publishers dealt with Google.
Yeah, exactly.
In 2000, 2001, where we weren't quite sure, and they're like, no, don't crawl us. But the difference is, and James made this clear, that there still was a substantial business model and a business rationale for letting Google index the content, because theoretically, if more traffic was going to go to the websites, I would be able to monetize that through advertising. So working with Google and figuring that out as a major media company is okay. It was okay. I don't know if they would make the same decision today, now that you have zero party clicks and Google's almost going the same as ChatGPT, if you will. But that's what it reminded me of. It almost seems, I totally want your take on this, because it almost seems like, what else are they going to do to try to get any kind of revenue from this? It's not there. So they basically say, oh, block. And hopefully, if we all block together, that OpenAI will give us money on a regular basis, like a contract. So then we will allow them to index. If they don't allow, and so you have most of the major publishers in the world, they say, oh, okay, we're going to block access for this AI to learn off of us and get information off of us, then theoretically they would be learning off of inferior content sources, which also scares me. So if we're going to use this and we're already down that path with AI, I almost want them to, I think they did it illegally, but I want them to scour everything now. And I especially want them to scour places where I think are closest to the truth, right? You'd want that, because all these other businesses are launching off of this ChatGPT system. So I don't really know. So I understand why they're doing it, but the problem is, unlike what happened with Google, there's no real business model. If they sold products and services, maybe there would be. Because ChatGPT is going to talk about us more. It's good for branding when we come up, and they'll buy our products. But the product, for the most part, for these media companies, is sponsorship and advertising. And that's really going to be hard to extract value from this. So I don't know what to take from it. What do you think? Are media companies doing the right thing?
No, I don't think they are. No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are. And I mean, I get why. I mean, this is this is one of those things that comes down from on high, from one of the executives who says, until we sort all this out, block it. And basically,
it's kind of like, I don't know about this boyfriend, so for right now, you're not allowed to see him until I get more information. You're the father or the mother.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly what this is, and it's a little foolish in my mind.
Grounded.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's a little foolish is because unless they're going to block Google too, all they're doing is hampering OpenAI and helping Google. That's all they're doing, because Google's going to index. Google's going to index your site, and if you don't think for 1 minute that Google isn't using its index to actually train its learning model, then you're crazy. Of course, they're doing that.
That's such a great point. I mean, they're all doing the same thing,
right? And even if it wasn't Google, right? Are you gonna block? Are you gonna continually keep up this arms race to block every bot that hits your site? Index or otherwise. Microsoft, by the way, same thing with Bing, right? Are you going to block the Bing bot? Are you going to block the Google bot? Are you going to block, every other search engine block? Because every other search engine that's indexing your website and your content is pulling that in, and arguably, OpenAI doesn't need that either. They would just use Google, right? They would just use Google to get the information that they need or want in order to train the learning model. So really, all you're doing is you're perhaps, maybe, and I'm not technical enough to know this, perhaps you're blocking OpenAI from a level of depth in terms of the amount of content. But I would hazard a guess and say that Google Index already pulls most of it. So they can get it from Google. Now, whether Google will not make the information available to OpenAI is a different story. But until then, this is a little bit like, literally sticking your finger in the dam when there's 14 other holes. Already. It's like I don't really understand the purpose of it.
The other thing is too,
or the efficacy of it.
Well, the other thing is too, go back 20 years. It was very important that Google indexed these major media sites because they had most of the whatever quote unquote real content was. Today, there's so many avenues.
Oh, sure.
To get this information.
Yeah.
So if you're probably just giving an opportunity to another company out there who doesn't have their business model in sponsorship and advertising and say, please, index us.
That's right.
Every one company that says we're going to block, there's 1,000 companies that says, please index us. Yeah. Because we want to be found in that anything company.
We want to be the answer, right? We want our point of view on the world to be the answer that is given, right? And so, I mean, I think there's some level of argument to be made here for the style of feature writers, right? So, in other words, I understand less why a CNN or New York Times or Washington Post does this, because honestly, the news is too open. It arguably that covering the news, whether it's sports or politics or international news or wars or whatever it is, you're just not gonna keep that. It's just there's Facebook, Twitter, X. There's so many places where that news can be gotten. You're not going to prevent the learning model from learning about these events, the Ukraine and international, and who's going to win the presidential election, and you're going to prevent that from happening by blocking your news. What you will block, theoretically, are the style of some of your really heavy feature writers, your heavy editorial folks. The people who actually people may want to try and emulate the style of in terms of AI and all of that. And so for that, it's like, maybe I get that, because there's something, and this is worth a lot more deep thinking, what we're starting to see now, and Galloway talked about this on his podcast, right, where thought leaders, in fact, I've seen 2 other thought leaders in my social media feeds in the last 2 weeks say this, that they're building their own quote unquote learning models where you can go to their website and you can ask questions and the bot will automatically answer that question in the style of, whoever it is. And Galloway saying,
and thinking.
Yeah, basically I can, go and ask Professor Galloway a question and the AI will answer. And I think the long-term value of that, and this is particularly ironic when it comes to Galloway, is I think that's a damaging thing to do to your brand, because what you're ostensibly saying is that your knowledge from an external point of view is, you're not that special, basically, so, trying to say that you can just get the answer that you need from a bot is it's, I just think it's a commoditization of what your thinking is. And I think if you're trying to keep your thinking on a value base, you want to create scarcity with it, right? So you want to create, you want to create that scarcity of of access to you and the interpersonal relationship to you, because that's what creates the value. So I there's a push and pull here for sure when it comes to making information available to the learning models, but to me, there's what these news organizations are doing is just foolish in their efforts.
Well, the point that you made is OpenAI is just one.
Yeah,
so they're blocking one. They're blocking the most well-known one right now. They're not doing anything for anything else. So it's going to get indexed regardless. And you're gonna, if you're OpenAI and you're ChatGPT, you're like, all right, you're not going to, I'm not going to pay you off. I'm just doing this anyways. And our truth is not going to include you. That's the scary thing, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. It probably will include them. I have to imagine, and again, I have no intimate knowledge of this, that OpenAI goes, okay, so we're not going to spider yours. So we'll get the information. I mean, the information will get there. Right, whether we use Google or whether we use social media and whether we use publicly facing links that we're not going to spider your site, okay? But your content lives beyond your site anyway, right? Your content lives on the Google index, it lives on social media, it lives on so many other places where the bot can get to it and doesn't have to spider your website. That it's inconsequential, really.
Well, it is inconsequential. I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, where one of the AI authorities was saying there's just not enough content out there at all, because it's learning so fast. It needs so much more content to learn off of. So that's why it's saying it's actually scouring the dark web, because there's so much content on the dark web, which is scary. But it is, because on the open web there's just not enough anymore. It's already gone through all of this, and what it's making on a daily basis still isn't enough because it's moving so fast. This is all scary and beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. Well, there's also the notion that all it really needs to do is just keep up. In other words, keep current.
Yeah.
Because I read one article that talked about how the size of the LLM, you get to a certain point where there's a lot of diminishing returns in terms of size of the LLM. In other words, adding more to it isn't going to, but keeping it current obviously is, and the more current it is, the more valuable it is. It has to be.
Well, that's when you want answers, which is just one small part of it.
Well, exactly right. Yeah. But from a formulation standpoint, the learning model, from what I understand, and again, my understanding is limited here, you get to a certain size of LLM, and beyond that, it's a lot of diminishing returns in terms of how much smarter it gets based on size alone.
Well, that's the tagline for the show. Our understanding is limited.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. And or size doesn't matter. There you go.
Jeez.
But meanwhile,
yes.
So OpenAI is also making news this week. Basically, looking at it's so funny. Their site seems to be broken at the moment.
That's okay. I got it. You're talking about ChatGPT Enterprise.
I am talking about ChatGPT Enterprise. There it is.
They should have Captain Kirk really do something there.
Maybe. Enterprise grade security and privacy and the most powerful version of ChatGPT yet.
See?
Anyway.
Sold.
Getting into that, yes. OpenAI announced on the 28th, basically, we're launching ChatGPT Enterprise, which offers enterprise-grade security, privacy, unlimited higher-speed GPT-4 access, longer context windows for processing longer inputs, advanced data analysis capabilities, customization options, and much, much more. We believe AI can assist and elevate every aspect of our working lives and make teams more creative and productive. That's nice. Today marks another step toward AI assistant that for work that helps with any task, is customized for your organization and protects your company data. Written by an agency, I guarantee you 100% that was written by a boutique marketing agency.
That was written by ChatGPT?
I do not think that was. No, I was not written by ChatGPT. That was written by a young copywriter who is very proud of that introductory paragraph because it hits all of the features and benefits. I definitely have a take on this too. What do you think about ChatGPT Enterprise?
Oh, I give it 4.5 stars. No, I think it's good. I think we knew this was coming. This is
yes, of course, surprising exactly no one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I honestly think if you look at where Sam Altman thinks the business model is going for OpenAI, they're looking at both consumer and the business market. They're looking at Amazon. They're looking at the Amazon model, and what Amazon did with Amazon.com and AWS is beyond amazing. AWS, one of the biggest, if not the biggest B2B organization on the planet. A lot of people don't realize that. That's really the value and profitability behind Amazon.
That's right.
I think you're going to see the same thing here. You get little ChatGPT out to the consumers all over the place. You get millions of users. Great. But the money itself will come from enterprise. And this is where the core product will be long-term, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think you're right. Here's what did surprise me is that the way that they're positioning this, I think, well, first of all, Sam Altman has said himself that they need to make money, right? They need to make revenue, and he believes that an enterprise grade platform like this. I'm surprised that they actually didn't go initially, at least, into the AWS kind of model rather than sort of a direct to business sort of. In other words, sort of AWS is arguably B2B to B. In other words, I'm selling to the Twitters and I'm selling to the VMwares and I'm selling to the enablers businesses to create a platform by which you give your services, right? The classic, we're renting land basically, which is what AWS really does so enormously well. It just becomes literally the foundation, the platform by which all the other ecosystems are built, which is a much less risky business than because you build any kind of business you want, whether it's marketing or MarTech or ad tech or, privacy, security. I mean, just think of the entire technology stack that's delivered via AWS and it's that kind of business. And this, to me, was going to be a similar thing, but what they did instead, at least initially here, is to go right to the B2B, right? To go and sort of become a competitor to all the smaller companies that have arisen in the last 6 months to become, that are just ostensibly UI wrappers around ChatGPT, the ones that'll write your ad copy for you and do all these things. And so they're immediately jumping into the competitive pool, which spells trouble for a lot of these younger companies that have literally just launched in the last 6 months and are ostensibly just wrappers around, around ChatGPT.
Open source ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that market space, whether or not OpenAI can actually compete in that, because that is literally a why go for this when you can get the real thing? You don't have to go through an intermediary. You can go right to the horse's trough, as it were, and drink right from here, and you get the original OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Sure.
The features are ridiculous, but the features in most of these businesses at this point are ridiculous. It's like, if you look at the features that they offer up, it's like, you can share your prompts with your, through chat, literally you can chat with your peers through, it's like, is that needed? Like, it's not like a core feature, right? It's like when you start thinking about the core features of workflow and getting into this is so new for most businesses. Nobody knows, and so they've honed in on the one thing that they do know is a big issue right now, which is, of course, is privacy and protection of your data. But it's interesting because one of the major features is, of course, that you can customize, you can open it up and basically have your, if you want to go through their API and do all that, you can actually build your own sort of customized learning model on the backside of things if you have that technical horsepower.
I think for a large company, that is pretty valuable stuff. And there's a lot of intranets that already do this. No,
yeah,
I
maybe.
mean, you know better than most the number of companies that have so much content going out there internally. They have no idea how to find it, how to share it internally.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's exactly it.
Yeah, but if you create something and this can do that and say, okay, well, I need to know this. Where the heck is it? Nobody knows. But you build this thing. You use ChatGPT internally to build this thing as the most powerful internal communications tool, at least from a
that's the opportunity. Yes, largely speaking, I think that's the much more interesting opportunity is
I think,
to
don't
harness.
You think this is where that's leading, though, right?
It's interesting because yes, I think it's where it's leading, but it's not where they say they're going, right? I mean, all of these companies, to some extent, are leaning into the whole, even them, right, with the features that they mention at the top, right? Make teams more creative and productive, right? Which is that's the leading benefit statement for almost every one of these generative AI companies. It's basically help your team create more stuff, right? Automatically, right? To create all this wonderful stuff.
Do more with less.
Do more with less, right? Is the whole idea. It's not the more nuanced conversation of how do you enable your team to manage knowledge better and become better at what it is they're doing, which is, if you sort of look at the different ways that, the debates, if you will, online, on social media, it's all, AI helps me be more of me. It helps me be more of who I am and enhance my talents and do all those kinds of things. I'm saying it out there. A lot of people are saying it like that out there. And then other people are saying, no, I can feed it a headline and have it create 67 different headlines for A/B testing. Well, great. That's lovely. That's wonderful. But the more valuable thing to a business is exactly what you're talking about, I think, which is enhancing knowledge management, right? Which is enhancing the internal knowledge of the institution of the business and organizing it and finding the patterns for unstructured knowledge in the business and giving you a better access to it. That's not what's getting promised here
Well,
by
that's a
most
hard
of these
feature to
companies.
sell.
Totally.
Very
Totally.
and
It's a
who's
hard
buying-
sell.
Different people are buying that.
I
at the
totally
enterprise
get
level,
it.
too.
Yep. That's the, I mean, I lived this, right? With content management, web content management in the early 2000s, enterprise web content management, the benefit statement, the real benefit statement was get and harness every single word that your business says in the enterprise. Every document, every web page, every email, every piece of content, get your arms around it, put workflow behind it, put organization behind it. That's the real benefit. But nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to hear that. What people wanted to hear was, we make it easy for business users to update your web page. That's what they wanted to hear. That's what they bought. And so it's a really interesting time right now for enterprise technology in this space to see what the real benefits will be versus what is promised.
Yes.
I kind of went on a rant there. Sorry. I went on a little bit of a rant.
Well, you should. You have a long and noteworthy history when it comes to knowledge management. So I'm gonna, wherever you're going with this, I'm gonna pay attention to you.
Wherever I'm going with it. That was folks. That was Joe Pulizzi E's for move the hell on because I am bored. That's what that was. That was what that was. Hey, listen. Do you want to talk about any of these other stories before we get to our wonderful question here?
Can we do the Gannett one? I think we'll just wrap the AI one. We'll do the Gannett one. Let's get to the question.
Okay, great.
Let's do that.
So Gannett, so this is a fantastic and interesting story that feeds right into what we've just been talking about for the last 20 minutes, which is the headline comes from the Washington Post, which is kind of ironic given where Gannett is located, but very funny. The Washington Post, the headline for Gannett, by the way, is in Washington, D.C., or just on the other side of the river in Northern Virginia, but okay. Gannett halts AI-written sports recaps after readers mocked the stories. Readers visiting the Columbus Dispatch's high school sports section to catch up with their team might have encountered a new sports writer with a prolific byline and an odd way with words. The writer dubbed a football game between Central Ohio's Westerville North and Westerville Central a close encounter of the athletic kind. Another story about a game between the Wyoming Cowboys and Ross Rams described a scoreboard that was in hibernation in the fourth quarter. And then when Ayersville High School staged a late comeback, another game, a write-up in their win read, the pilots avoided the breaks and shifted into victory gear. The articles weren't written by a reporter, but by Lead AI, an artificial intelligence company that uses game scores to generate automated sports recaps for newsrooms. Lead AI stories in the Dispatch, which generally provided the outcomes of the high school games and the scoring after every period of play, were blasted on social media as having a stilted tone and using bizarre turns of phrase. The mockery appears to have had an impact. Gannett halted the use of Lead AI to write sports stories, Axios reported on Monday. And then basically they goes on to say, oh, yeah, we stopped doing that. Yeah, that's not good. So what do you think about this? I mean, this is your world.
I guess my take on this is this is just a temporary thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, shocked and appalled
that
computers are writing these stories. I mean, that's most content out there.
That's right.
Surprise again. So, okay, they got caught, a little bit of repetition. Yeah, this article is interesting because if you type in some of these phrases that you talked about, they're used in content, sports content everywhere, and Lead AI is sort of replicating some of this as they go. All right. So what are you going to do? You're going to get some human proofreaders. There's nothing wrong with the service. The service works. People thought it was kind of interesting the way that it was couched. So they're not using real solid human proofreaders, which is what they should be doing. They should be taking the AI content and running it through a human eye, and that's the missing step. You don't have to pull down the process because you are too cheap and don't want to hire a human proofreader. That's what you should be doing.
That's right.
Long story short, in a year, we won't know the difference again. We're so close. This is a lot. this is the Paul Reitzer says this all the time. The current version of AI that's out right now is the dumbest version of AI we'll ever see. In 6 months, it's going to be 10 times better, and in 6 months, it's going to be 10 times better than that version. So just, okay, oh my God.
Yeah. Well,
somebody's writing AI content in my sports pages. This is incredibly difficult for me to handle.
Yeah. Well, this is something, it's interesting. I think you're right, by the way, and I think Paul is right, in terms of how much better it will be. But you can see this. So there's two related topics to this, one of which we could have covered as its own story here, which is how much quote unquote dumber ChatGPT has gotten over the last few months. Which there's a whole thing about drift, and there's a whole thing about there's so much going on in AI right now to talk about. But what I wanted to say was I've seen this even in my own workings. Like I work every day now with ChatGPT or similar types of technologies, and one of the things that I've noticed is if I say rewrite this in a clever way, right? It's interesting how the AI defines clever, the word clever. Because what it typically does is it starts to add in all these dad joke sort of level, adjectives and stuff. I recognized right away some of that stuff that basically the sort of shifted into victory gear. It's like you get a lot of that when I say, hey, rewrite my bio, for example. I just did this as an experiment. I said rewrite my bio, but do so in a really clever way. And it did all of that. It went, like rocket ship Robert, went to the, it's like, he's off to the moon of content marketing and content strategy. It's like, oh dear. Okay. Well, that's how it defines clever, right? So I think there's a lot of things to get worked out here, and it'll get better. It will continue to get better. And, these are some of the experiments that we're going to continue to see sort of as spaghetti gets thrown against the wall, and a lot of this stuff is not going to. The fascinating thing will be, to me, and this goes right back to the original story we just talked about, is how much of that crap that doesn't get caught or doesn't get reduced becomes part of the ongoing learning model for the LLM going forward, right?
It already is, which is crazy. It's learning off of content it's already generating. So it's fun. It just reminds me, and we talked about this, I don't know, 6 months ago. But remember when this is 2013 at Content Tech, and Claire McDermott and I were having that conversation. There was a big article from the New York Times that said,
"Oh, that's right.
Is it AI or not?
Right.
Is it computer generated or not?" And she said, "We will not to put Claire not to throw you under the bus or anything, but she said, human content will always be better. We'll always be able to tell." And of course, she went through and she couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And at that time, that's 10 years ago.
That's right.
Can you imagine the difference from 10 years to now, and then what it'll be like in 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, the way that I look at when somebody says there'll always be humans needed in content creation, I would say needed, no. Wanted, maybe. I mean, so there will always be, I think, an opportunity for humans to be part of the content creation process, and maybe there should be. But 99.2% of all the content in 5 to 7 years will be electronically generated.
Yeah,
it will not be touched by a human being once the AI is set.
Certainly,
it's a horrible thing to say, but
it's just certainly informative content, right? The what I call constructed content, right? So user manuals and how-tos and factual and sports write-ups and covering political races.
I think the same about novels too, though. I really do.
I'm not sure about that.
I think that
that's where I'm not sure.
I think you're going to be able to go to your generator and say, I really would like an amazing novel set in Nantucket or Sandusky, Ohio, something like this, write me something. And you're going to get it, and you're going to read it, and you're like, wow, that was amazing.
I'm going to have ChatGPT write the Sheboygan Chronicles is what I'm going to
do. I think I've changed my mind. I'm going to move from Sandusky, Ohio to Sheboygan.
Yeah, there you go.
From the setting of my next novel.
I like it. Hey, we should take a question from our wonderful audience here
before we okay, so this is from
Annie Schiffman.
I
love Annie.
Long-time listener.
Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? Annie, are you okay?
He says, if we get this to work.
Hi there, Robert and Joe. This is Annie Schiffman from Downstage Media. And here's a question about LinkedIn that's been on my mind. So I know that a lot of CEOs and founders and executives want to show up regularly on LinkedIn, but they don't want to take the time to write their LinkedIn posts. So they hire someone else to strategize and create and schedule those posts. So that way, all they have to do is say, okay. But my question is this disingenuous in a sort of like Cyrano de Bergerac, Milli Vanilli sort of way? Like, I'd hate to think that thought leaders that I follow are simply just approving posts that I thought they'd written and somebody else actually wrote. But on the other hand, like, I get how difficult it is to show up regularly on social, and hiring someone else who can do it better is kind of what delegating is all about. So, and then it gets me thinking, like, how much different is it really from using templates or swipe files or AI? So I'm wondering what your point of view is on this situation. Thank you so much.
A great question, Annie.
Yeah.
And I'm going to. So I was. You and Annie had a conversation on.
We did
an email through this. And
Yeah, we
you
did.
had a wonderful answer, and why don't you share kind of your thoughts?
Well, what I told Annie was, so I look at this through sort of three lenses of comfort. And it really depends on where your comfort level falls in terms of the work you want to do or the work that you want to delegate. And the three lenses are, one, for example, how, and it's funny, it was ironic because I have had a social media assistant, a person, not an AI, an assistant who has worked for me for the last, 5 years. And she recently took another job, and so I'm actually doing it on my own again. But that lens is everything that is on, a longer post on LinkedIn or any social media platform, because Facebook for me and Instagram for me are just personal. The only business stuff is on LinkedIn, really, and Twitter. And so any long post is all me. I create it, I write it, etc. Any reply is all me. I reply, I do all replies. But she helps me curate all of my quote unquote best of, or my greatest hits, if you will. And that's what we typically put as part of our editorial calendar. She also helps me curate finding the external stuff that I share. We meet and we talk. And we talk about putting together an editorial calendar for a given month, and away we go. And she actually pushes publish and works with Buffer and does all the stuff. But we work on it sort of in a co-created way, if you will. I find that fine, and probably most people will find that fine. The second lens is then, okay, where you go, all right, we want to help a thought leader create content. And I used to do this with my CEO back in the day, who an extraordinarily smart guy, but didn't have time to write, wasn't going to write. But I really wanted him to have the occasional blog post, the occasional video, the occasional white paper, authored by him, because he was very thoughtful person, but he was never going to write that because he just doesn't have the time. So what I would do is I would have one of my marketing managers interview him, or I would have him leave me literally a long voicemail on his commute home about what's on his mind. What is he thinking about? What's he talking about? What's he, just literally vomit up his thinking. And then I would have the writer basically form and create a good blog post or a good paper or both out of that, show it to him, say, does this meet your standards? He'd say yes, no, change this, change that, and then away we would go. And maybe that's where your level of discomfort starts to get a little bit weird, because, okay, that's maybe right for some people, but not all people to be able to do that, because that does get a little Cyrano. I can see that argument, but for me, that still is okay. And then it's that third level that I think you're really getting to, which is basically you turn it over to somebody. You turn your voice over to somebody on social media. There's almost every big celebrity that you know of that's them, right? So they're basically big celebrities. They have teams of people who respond for them, who post for them, who basically act as, extensions of their PR and comms team, and basically are just them. Now, there's also executives who do this, and I totally don't think that's the right way to use social media. I think if you're going to use social media, you've got to have some level of participation in it. So I think you've got to find your level of comfort in terms of what it is you're doing. That second level, I know, is a little interesting or sort of debatable, if you will. But I don't find that to be bad because, in other words, the ghostwriter or the creation of it, as long as the originator's thoughts, and they respond and they do the things, in other words, the way we used to do responses to that CEO, by the way, was to say, hey, listen, here are the responses. What do you think? And what would you say? And then we would actually do it for him. So that's to me is delegation is okay. So those are the three lenses I typically look at it through.
Yeah. And when you mention ghostwriters, we know you and I know a lot of ghostwriters, and they
for sure
painstaking work to talk and work with and get an idea of who the person is that they're writing for.
That's right.
That they can speak, talk, create just like they would, and then generally it's reviewed by that person too.
Exactly.
So in that case, I'm okay with that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. Exactly. So there you go. That's my answer.
That was a great answer.
Oh, thank you.
Very thoughtful.
No, that was a great question. I mean, Annie had a great question.
Areas. Yeah. There should be a blog post.
Yeah.
But it's just on this podcast, and
it's just on this. It's the value you get exclusively.
I'm listening to this
on the Chronicles of Sheboygan.
If you're 56 minutes in, you get this kind of value on
that's right.
On this old marketing.
That is right. Okay, so we have now rants and raves where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave that makes us feel like it's the beginning of NFL weekend, or that I think your Browns are going to be better than you think they're going to be. I've been watching them, and I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to take Cincinnati this weekend. I'll put it that way.
History says no.
Okay.
I'll be there. I will be there, and I will root. And
I thought you were gonna do the opposite, right? You were gonna pull a George Costanza and sort of do the opposite.
I'm there. I'm
okay.
I'm 100% fan, but
okay.
Cleveland fans know this. You were just internally negative about every result possible. It's been we haven't had a Super Bowl ever.
Yeah,
we won the last non-Super Bowl, Cleveland Browns, but
that's right.
Then,
all right,
it's been a long time. But
what do you got? You want to go? Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
Yeah, real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
I just I'll let me see if I can bring this up, and it's really not necessary to show it, but here's the LinkedIn verification. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but you can verify not only you, the person, the human being on LinkedIn, but you can verify where you worked and when you worked there and those types of things. But all I've done so far for verification is verified that it is me. And you go in there and it says it's when you click on, because under my, you go to Joe Pulizzi and it'll say, oh, it's verified. And then you click on it. It's verified by Clear. I want to get your take on it because you're a Clear member as well. So I'm a Clear member. I became a Clear member because I do so much travel through the air, and depending on how long the lines are, sometimes it's very necessary. If I'm running late or I need to get through security quickly, Clear is amazing. Actually, we get it as part of our package as part of our American Express Platinum business partnership, so it works out really well from that standpoint. And then I learned recently that LinkedIn had this partnership with Clear. I think they have a partnership with a couple other identity Entra. What is it? There's a couple other ones. Maybe Aadhaar, Entra. LinkedIn workplace verification with LinkedIn Learning. Anyways, I love this whole idea of social media and verification. I think it's necessary. I think most people will have to do it at some point. Clear makes it very easy. It took me like 2 minutes to get verified, but you did not have that kind of experience.
I haven't yet. I mean, so I learned about this weirdly while I was traveling, and this could have been the reason. So I learned about this while I was traveling a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. I learned about the LinkedIn thing and clicked on the link, took me to Clear, and it wanted me to create a new Clear account. I've had a Clear account for years. Yeah. So there was nowhere to log in, and I was like, well, okay, I'll log in to Clear. So I logged into Clear and then went back and clicked the link again, thinking, okay, now it'll recognize me as a as a member, and it didn't. It just would not let me do it without creating a new Clear account. But it sounds like that has been either remedied, or I was, or user error on my part. So
yeah, it was super easy to do. So
Yeah.
I would just say if you have a Clear account, go ahead and get verified. It doesn't cost anything to do that. I would imagine that more and more, maybe Meta will get into this side of it. I mean, they're doing their own form of verification because you're paying for it. And you're sort of paying for it this way because you're a Clear member. I'm not sure how that works or if there's any money changing hands from that standpoint, but I just like the fact
it probably is a little bit. Yeah.
well, and this is important to me because, and we've talked about this before, I've had multiple accounts out there where people are pretending to be me, and it's really bothersome.
Yeah.
I mean, that more than anything else, I think it bothers me when somebody else I know is having a conversation. It's supposed to be me, but it's not me. And they really are like hit hard by it. It's like, oh my God, I was talking to you, but it wasn't you. I'm like, this is just horrible. So anytime that we can get this verification that works, I'm all for it. And at some point, I think most of us in the world will be verified in some way. And this is one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and Clear needs a good story right now because they just had a big F up at the.
Oh, I didn't hear about.
They had a whole issue where people were getting in. They had I mean, for the TSA, this is a big issue for the FAA and TSA. This is a big deal where they had like 2 or 3 people who got in through Clear basically without showing anything. They were not. They got in through Clear, but weren't Clear members basically. But got through anyway. And so for a while, it may still be the case, but for a while at LAX anyway, you had to even if you used Clear, you had to show all your IDs and stuff. And so
Okay.
They need some good press, and they need more and more of this kind of stuff. The stadium stuff, the access to other areas to keep relevant and keep people wanting to pay $150 a year.
The verification, yeah, like and it's getting there a little bit where Clear is moving into the different stadium atmospheres, but that is a real benefit if you can skip the line and not have to worry about and really you don't even need an ID.
Yeah,
you just need whatever. Like I use my eyes. I don't know what you use when you go through Clear, but it's my
eyes. Yeah,
and I just happen to always take my eyeballs with me, so I never have to worry about
That's
that.
Good. That's so nice. That's so nice
One
of
less
you
thing. Hey,
to bring your eyes with you. Yeah,
I forget a lot of stuff these days. So I mean, there's one less thing I have to worry about. I just have to be me. I'll get in.
I forgot my belt, but I remembered my eyes. That's always a good thing.
It's very true. All right, what do you got?
I have.
Is yours a rant? What is yours?
It's more just commentary than anything. So basically, and what we'll link to in the show notes is an article from Axios. So for those of you who live in an area where you're served cable television through Charter Spectrum or just Charter, basically you don't have access to any of the Disney channels at the moment. There's been a big blackout caused by the fact that Charter and Disney are fighting. So you can't get access to ABC, ESPN, FX. Basically, they're blacked out, and they're blacked out here in LA. So of course, being LA, being Hollywood, and all of that, it's causing quite the controversy, as the folks in the UK might say. And basically, the interesting thing to me, and why this is interesting to pay attention to, is because, and the Axios article covers this, is like, this is kind of the canary in the coal mine for basically cable television becoming irrelevant, because it kind of doesn't matter, right? And Charter is basically saying, hey, listen, you need to, reprice your bundle, and the bundle being probably ABC, ESPN, FX, blah, blah, blah. And they serve it the way the cable TV business works and has worked for 40 or 50 years is if you're in if you're Viacom, or if you're, you basically bundle up, or HBO, or, any of the big media companies, you bundle up your properties, you bundle up your channels, and then you basically sell them on a 10-year contract to the cable companies. And so the cable companies would pay for a license to carry, ABC, ESPN, FX, or in the case of HBO, it might be HBO and Cinemax and, yada, yada, all the rest of it. Showtime, when I worked at Showtime, it was Showtime and MTV and VH1 and all the Viacom channels. But basically, that's the way it works. And so when those contracts come due, They renegotiate them, of course, and they're usually on 10-year sorts of agreements. But basically, they've not been able to come to an agreement, and so they're blacked out at the moment. And so the interesting thing is that Disney, there's now class action lawsuits going on in some places in Florida, for example, because Disney is saying, hey, listen, we offered to, basically extend it, and while we try and negotiate this out. And Charter's basically playing hardball here, and I think really mistakenly doing so. It's clear that Charter wants out of the cable TV business. They are really focusing on their internet business. The internet mobile business is where they're really focused in on now. So this could be the tipping point where cable TV actually starts to go away in any meaningful way. And it just happened to coincide with fascinating. I'm a DirecTV, so this doesn't affect me at all here living in LA because I subscribe to DirecTV for the moment. But this weekend, I cut off I cut off everything but the most basic services on DirecTV. And the reason why is because I'm not watching it anymore. I'm only watching streaming stuff pretty much and on internet. And so I kind of don't need cable TV or DirecTV anymore. And especially now that NFL Ticket is on YouTube, I'm kind of done with DirecTV as well. So that's it's just a fascinating data point for me. And I think it plays into the same thing I was talking about last week and the week before with the writer strike and the actor strike, which is the media model, the business model of media is fundamentally shifting. And those that are fighting that, you should be careful what you're asking for because you'll probably get it. And that's the fascinating thing to me about this. Charter may get what they're asking for, but it probably isn't what they ultimately want.
Yeah. It's interesting, as Charter makes their move into a new business model and get away from television. I saw a sign the other day. Remember ADP, this home security company?
Sure, yeah,
that's been rocked by Ring and all these other home camera systems. ADP is now getting into the solar business.
Yeah.
Which I was shocked by, but I'm like, okay, well, you have a customer base that doesn't want your security service anymore. What do you do? And they're like, we got to do something.
Right.
It's just crazy how these companies are shifting.
It all goes back to Theodore Levitt. Understanding what business you're really in. Yep. What business are you really in? We talked about this when we were looking at the HVAC business, right? Are you in the air conditioning business or are you in the home comfort business,
That's
right? So
yes. Energy efficiency, like what are you doing? Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
So good.
Good stuff. All right, what do you got this week? You're back. You're working.
I'm working, but you're right. It's the home opener. And we're gonna be there in force, and I'm looking forward to it. And we really need a win. It's
going to be great. I predict a Browns win. I predict a Browns win this weekend.
It will because I think what I predict them. I think I predicted them at 7-10 this year.
Yeah,
I believe, and you did 12-5
for the Cowboys. Yes.
Who do the Cowboys have this weekend?
Giants. They open at the Giants.
Oh, that's a tough
great
one.
Game. Yeah, great game. Sunday night. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. Got the burgers ready. It's going to be. I'm all set. Yeah,
that's fantastic. All right, back to NFL season.
That is it.
Everyone, get ready. Less marketing, more.
That's
football
right.
Talk.
More football. And for all of you who hang out for that, we really appreciate you. But we appreciate everything about you, and thank you so much. Listener questions, please bring those on. Basically everything that you do. Thank you so much for doing it. And until we see you next week, just remember, everybody, it is your story to tell. Tell it well. See you next week on This Old Marketing.